Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to say this the nicest way possible for you and I, for our sake. Right now, Blade is the worst addition to your account, considering his cost as a limited 5-star. This isn't even a controversial take. Even compared to these so-called low-value picks, he does not have an incredibly meta team like Rappa and Topaz. He cannot worm his way into many teams like Huacha or Ling Sha, and he does not have a lot of good buffers to take advantage of, like even Zila or Jing Yuan. And the crazy part is that when Blade was actually good, those used to be his advantages. Hyper Carry used to be arguably the only meta team, which he did fairly well at. He was flexible enough to be a sub DPS and a Hyper Carry, which was pretty rare, and he was incredible for Bronya team, the best team in the game around that point. It's like as time went on, everything went into reverse for Blade, which I guess fits his Mara Struck deal that he's got going on, and he's now become the butt of the joke in meta discussions when the title of DPS is brought up. It seemed like the Arlan comparisons weren't too far off at this point, and this time it's not a compliment. It's actually a pretty big insult that he compared to Arlan these days. As a Blade user myself, I often wonder what they could do to reverse the damage that they have done and push Blade back to the meta, because they just can't keep rerunning him forever without people just looking at him sideways, right? There's plenty of solutions that come to mind, but which one of these are realistic? Which are kind of bad for the game and can have some really bad implications if not balanced well. Plenty of people have already offered their solutions to this, but I have a different idea. Today, I will share and discuss a secret, yet maybe not actually a secret path, which I believe will push Blade back to the meta and I think is the most possible thing that they could do to him right now. Before anything else, let's discuss Blade as a concept. Blade scales mostly off his max HP, a decent amount of crit rate through relics and traces, and has a decent amount of damage percent. While Blade's multipliers seem low, base max HP is higher than twice your base attack in addition to HP boosts from relics, so it's not actually that low as it seems. Well, the unfortunate reality of what has happened is that Blade's multipliers are still pretty bad, even with that considered, and there's multiple aspects of his kit that continue to be ignored in the current meta. Sure, he has an HP drainer support in Jade, and any future HP sap might help him, but the potential of Blade's HP drain ticks is a little shaky because he's still suffering from no overcap tax that older characters have, so you could have 3 units to drain his HP in one turn, and depending on the situation, that would still at most result to only 1 follow-up after the turn ends, which is pretty bad. Adding multipliers to Blade is good, but it will have to be specific to max HP, since his attack stat might as well be nothing. And you know what happens to characters that provide something this niche, they aren't usually played very much. And you could argue that some characters like Shui, who has gigantic self buffs, will be the bigger benefactor of said unit. And a max HP buffer is pretty sketchy too. Max HP buffing for a preservation character like maybe a Fu Xuan type of sustain is good enough and isn't going to break the game. But if you make a Harmony max HP buffer, if their max HP buff was actually that good that Blade would be somewhat meta, you can simply use that Harmony on better DPS characters for no sustain runs, since a max HP buff that big cuts down a lot of stress. Imagine squishy teams like Fei Xiao teams actually being able to take hits and not suffering from sustain taxes. A team-wide 50% max HP buff already makes you take around twice more hits effectively and still only slightly better than the value of HP boots. So taking that into mind, what else could you actually do for Blade? Well, one of Blade's strength is having incredibly high survivability. Despite being at half HP most of the fight, he has just as much HP as some characters in full health. Being tanky as a DPS by itself is not unique though. We have Yun Li, others from the destruction class that can take some damage. But being tanky these days as a damage dealer is no longer something people value. At 1.2 when Blade released, sure, sustains, especially limited ones, were a commodity that having a less taxing slot for your sustain was a pretty nice thing. But since our limited sustains now are so much more varied and so strong that they can do everything on their own, despite your team being as fragile as a house of cards, then that doesn't matter. This by itself is not a secret, but think about it with me here. If you have one blade on the team, then you will not be getting much padding on your team, especially if paired with elements as sustain like Fu Xuan. If you have two blades on the team, then you can get away with Lynx or someone weaker. If you have three blades on the team, there's a very good chance you can run no sustain at all, and you would rather use Ron Mei, which is often what happens in pure fiction actually. If you have four blades, then you never need to worry about dying at all. This is my destruction theory. Compared to other monopath teams of before, like Acheron and Fake Xiao teams, they do not suffer from being squishy due to EHR, attack, and crit investment. They are fully capable of self-sustaining and can safely bring a support unit as a fourth like Robin. This is why something like Crit Xiao works so well. You are consolidating damage and decent enough safety where your team has more free slots to increase overall damage per action value. This team structure on its own has a higher base power than other combinations of teams. Of course, this idea cannot work if the new unit is not strong enough, and honestly 4 copies of Blade aren't going to be that strong either. So we really need a Destruction Acheron that can do tremendous amount of damage for this to work. And for Blade to actually feel good, that Destruction Acheron would need him in some form. Like Fei Xiao would want Topaz or Motsa. Maybe an energy system based on HP loss could help with that. This would mean something like a hit split, where other characters get hit if they're destruction or something like that, as long as one destruction is hit. This can also prevent characters like Yun Li getting screwed over and making hit RNG useless, making it an even safer and more consistent team. There's a lot of ways you could go about a Destruction Acheron and a Mono Destruction team, and of course, unlike Bronya, this is a matter of numbers. It is a good team on paper, but not so good that the numbers can just outright ruin it. And as always with these DPS teams, replacements are abound as power creep goes on. But nevertheless, this potential quality that can emerge from a Destruction Acheron could very well lead to Blade's final team. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to share my idea of a mono destruction team and a Destruction Acheron type of deal. And I hope you guys liked it. Make sure to like the video, do all the algorithm stuff. On Friday, there will be a new theorem video.